Please have a seat. Well, I'm humbled and honored to be able to facilitate this talk with you. I want to thank Manu for organizing it, and all of you for taking out some time in your day to be here and expand your mind and your connection with others. So, just first, and the way that we'll do this talk, we spoke a little bit about this, is we also really want to hear from you, um, and why you're here and what you want to learn. And so we will just have a chat for about half the time, and then leave it up to you to ask some questions and hear what's on your mind, and what our esteemed speaker can provide some insight on. So I'll just start by saying thank you for making the time to be here. And when Manu was reading your list of projects you're working on, and she started by saying you left a career behind, it sort of didn't sound like that to me at all. It sounds like what you have built is really beautiful, and important in the world. So I am interested in your journey, though, and your that you wrote about in the journey home, and how you got from a young man in Chicago to being an incredible spiritual leader in India. So that's a long story, I'm sure, but we would love to hear some parts of it.
Thank you, Suzanne. I am truly grateful to be here at this inspirational community of Salesforce. It's giving such a direction to the whole world on so many levels. I'm truly honored to be here. Thank you. I was born in Chicago in 1950. That makes me 68 and a half years old. And if you use the mathematics, you'll come to the conclusion that I was a teenager in the 1960s, which was a very turbulent time in this country, when there were a lot of questions. It's very similar to today's times, where I was torn, because when I was very young, my father and mother, who were brought up in the Great Depression, and there was so much poverty in this country at that time, they struggled to make a living. And my father had to leave school when he was 14 to work full time to help the family, and he never was able to go back. So somehow they struggled, and my father and his elder brother, they invested everything they had in 1958 in a business. It was called the Edsel Ford, and they went totally bankrupt, and the family was really struggling. And one thing that was very beautiful, my father was working about 18 hours a day just to keep us from losing our little home. And my mother was working even harder, trying to deal with 3 sons and make ends meet. And yet my father and mother would tell me the same thing on a regular basis, that all the stuff we're doing in this world, we have to do. But the only thing that's really important is our love for each other. And I would say, well, if that's all that matters, why are you always working so hard? They said, this is just something we have to do for the family, to express our love, but the only thing that really matters in life is our love for each other. And one time my mother, it was her birthday, and like boys are boys, we forget mothers' birthdays. So my mother took it very personally when we remember her birthday. So it was the evening, and I was about to go to sleep, and I realized it was her birthday, and I forgot all day, and everyone in the family forgot. So I ran out to our little backyard, and my mother had a little tiny garden with 3 rose bushes, and there was only 1 rose in the whole garden. And I tore that rose off. And I ran inside, and I gave it to my mother, and I said, "Happy birthday." It seems like a simple event, but it had an impact that very much made me who I am today. She took that rose, and with tears in her eyes, she put it in her nose, she put it in her forehead, she pushed it on her eyes, she pushed it on her heart, and she thanked me. She said, "It's not the thing that gives anything value. It's the exchange of love in which it's given that gives something value." She said, "If you would have given me a pearl or diamond necklace, it would not have been more valuable as this rose." And she knew I stole it from her. It's the love, it's the thought that counts. At that time, being about a 10-year-old boy, I was just happy I got away with it. That I didn't get scolded. It took me years, but when it was the right time in my life, that lesson that was invested within my heart and within my mind actually gave me a compass, a direction to lead my life. Things could give some amount of satisfaction to the body and the mind, but things can never give fulfillment to the heart. It's only love, to love and to be loved, that gives fulfillment to the heart. And if we have in our life so much, and over the years I've kind of come to an understanding of what real wealth is. Real wealth is what we know how to do, what we know, what we can do, what resources, money, property, whatever we may have, relationships, if they are utilized in such a way that they give us a meaning, purposeful, fulfilling life for ourselves, for our family, and the world around us, that is wealth. If we're a simple villager and we just live in a straw hut, or if we're a multi-billionaire living in a grand mansion and having them all over the world, neither one is either a qualification or disqualification. The question is the relationships we have with our own heart and soul, with our loved ones, and with the world giving us purpose, meaning, and a sense of love and being loved, then we're actually wealthy. Otherwise, we can, like a little girl, could be dressed very pretty, but if her parents don't have time for her, she looks lovely but lives in misery, because really what she wants is to be loved, to be appreciated, to be recognized. Things are not going to make her happy. And we never grow up beyond that, actually. So I was working when I was about 15. I was getting jobs after school and on weekends and in the summer. And almost everybody I was working with was from the African American community from the south side of Chicago. And these people were all my parents' age. And they were my friends. They really gave me something, a genuine and real affection and guidance. But I saw in them so much discrimination against them. In the 1950s and 60s, if you're from that community, if you're born in the ghetto, 98% chance you're going to live and die in that ghetto. There wasn't educational opportunities, there wasn't job opportunities. And they were all alcoholics just to deal with their with the sufferings that was inflicted upon them. And then the next day, after being with them and seeing the condition, we used to pledge allegiance to the flag of America. That was a law in all the schools. And we put our hand at our heart and say, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'm a 15-year-old boy, and I'm saying that, and I'm asking, is this true? Is there liberty and justice for all? It seems like there's liberty and justice for some, but for others, there's no chance. There's something wrong. And when I grew a little older, the Vietnam War was raging, and many of us really didn't understand why we're there, but yet we either went to jail or went to kill people who we liked. There was no in-between except escaping for the country. So there were serious questions. Questions about the leadership of our nations, questions about what really is valuable in our lives. So I joined the civil rights movement and was very much close with friends of Martin Luther King. And I joined the counterculture, which had a very big influence here in San Francisco on the world in the 60s. I was questioning. I wanted to make a difference. I heard Gandhi's statement, be the change you want to see in the world, but I had to change myself if I wanted to really make a change. And more I was thinking that inner change of value, character, and purpose in life is something spiritual. But then I came to another crossroads. I saw so much hate, discrimination, and arrogance in the name of a loving God in sectors of practically all the religions I was exposed to. So I believed that I either had to reject the idea of spirituality or religion, or there must be something beautiful, something unifying, that's at the heart, at the essence of all true spiritual paths. And I believed that that was there. And basically that was my mission, to find that. And what my career would have been, that I wasn't really concerned with, because I was really idealistic. And I was going to college for one semester, and then I took a summer trip with a friend. I was supposed to come back after 2 months. That was 1970, and I haven't come back yet. Somehow or other, when we got to Europe, and we had no money because one of us was robbed, and I was going to cathedrals and going to synagogues and going to forests and going to riverbanks and museums, trying to find deeper purpose and meaning in life and messages that could enlighten me. And it's a long story, but I ended up hitchhiking to India. It took 6 months from London to Delhi. And I studied Christianity, Judaism in the Middle East, hitchhiking through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. I studied Islam. When I got to India, I went to the Himalayas, and I was studying various forms of Buddhism and meditation and yoga and Hinduism and Baha'i and Jainism and Sikhism, and I was really studying meeting different holy people and great scholars of their traditions. And I really found people in all these traditions who were of that essence, where they found a love within themselves. And when that love is expressed in the world, it takes the form of compassion. And compassion is the most holistic healing medicine for all beings, for the environment, for our relationships with our own families, and for our connections with each other in this world. Compassion is an unselfish spirit of truly being a well-wisher of others. And if we can find within ourselves that place where we have where we find peace, where we find satisfaction, where we find meaning, then we can actually witness the deeper relationships we really have with each other and with all beings. And that was kind of my journey. And I'll tell you one experience I had that really, there was dozens of these experiences that really had an impact. There's a place in Afghanistan called Kandahar. And when I was there, the Afghani people in 1970 were among the friendliest, most hospitable, kind people in the world. They're just so accommodating and so non-judgmental. And one day I was sitting with some of my friends in a little tea shop. We were squatted. There was no chairs. We were just squatted on an earthen floor. There was about 6 of us. And this boy, about 15 years old, came in. He was wearing rags. He was emaciated, thin. He was really in poverty. He was homeless, actually. But the most startling thing for me were his eyes. He was blind. His eyes were grossly swollen, discolored, and nothing covered them. I couldn't even look at him. And he had a little musical instrument with a stick and a wire that was nailed on both sides of it, and a little cannon in the middle. And he played that instrument. It went drum, 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 drum. And he started singing. And as he was singing a spiritual song. His face illuminated the whole atmosphere. He was smiling. He was like crying in joy as he was singing. And it was a culture shock for me. Because in the world that I grew up, having good health, having beauty, having money, having property, education, this is what defined as a happy life. And this boy had absolutely none of it. He was illiterate, he was penniless, and his body was in sad condition. But yet, he was the happiest person I had ever seen in my life. And this was no longer just a curiosity question, what is real happiness? This caused me, at the very core of my being, to ask this question, what is actual happiness? And he became one of my teachers. I never met him again, but it's 49 years later, and I'm still remembering the lesson he taught me.
That's a beautiful story, and we can find lessons, I think, in so many places where we're not expecting to find them if we can keep our eyes open. And in the vein of keeping your eyes and your heart open, compassion is something that you talked about as sort of a fund, at least what I heard was, kind of a fundamental source of connectedness to oneself, to relationships, to joy. And we live in this crazy, fast-paced world called Silicon Valley and the United States of America, and have, and tumultuous times of growing inequality. And at some level, that experience of your childhood is turned up now, ever more so. How does one connect? How does one cultivate compassion? How does one slow down? How does one, what are the most important things for us to be mindful of as we are thinking about sort of cultivating compassion, cultivating connectedness and joy?
To be like you. No, really, Susan.
Oh, my 15-year-old would deeply disagree.
But as she grows older like me, she'll agree. She'll think back, what a wonderful mother. Teenagers usually don't get it until they come out of their teens, especially here in America. There's a saying, if you lose your wealth, you lose nothing. If you lose your health, you lose something. If you lose your character, you lose everything. And that doesn't mean we should not be really, really enthusiastic, perseverant, and dedicated to our career, but it means we have to balance it accordingly so that our career we're not a prisoner of what we're doing, but rather what we're doing is something that's very valuable for our purpose in life and our relationships in life. It's a very important thing. And compassion is something that needs to be cultivated. I would assume each and every one of you has a cellular phone. The cellular phone can do so many things. There's so many apps that can achieve so many different things. But whatever type of cellular phone you have to charge it every day. When you charge it, you activate it with the energy in which everything else functions. So in order to infuse compassion and values and real character into our life, we need to put some time aside a day to actually charge the batteries of our higher values and our purpose in life. Could be meditation, prayer. In our tradition, we chant beautiful mantras that give us a deep inner connection. Also by associating with people who really give us positive energy, like-minded people who uplift us, who enlighten us. That charges us. In Sanskrit, the word satsang means to be with positive people who really uplift us and enlighten us with higher virtues and values. And to put some time aside, sadhana, to cultivate the relationship we have with our own hearts. Emerson, he said, the reason there's so many complications and so much quarrel and hypocrisy in this world is that human beings are disconnected from their own selves. If a building has a strong foundation, then you could build wonderful things on that foundation. And when the storms come, everything you build on it maintains its integrity. If you don't have that strong foundation and you're putting so much energy on building up and up and up, however well decorated it is, if a storm comes, it collapses. So in our personal relationships with each other, in our careers, what we're contributing to our companies, to each other, it's what we're building in our life. Now, foundation is not seen with the eyes, but we know how important it is. If somebody came to this incredible building, when I was driving here today, someone was driving me actually, and I asked, where is this place we're going? Because I live in Mumbai in India, so I don't know that much about the geography of America. And we were long distance away. They said, that's the place right there. It's an incredible building. It really looks like it's meant to take you to a higher place. It looks like it's architecturally designed with that spirit to bring us higher. And the architecture is incredible. The decorations, the art, the furniture. Nobody comes and says, this building has an incredible foundation, because you don't see it with your eyes. But a person who has some wisdom knows that there had to be months and months and months of hard work to develop a foundation that will never be seen by anybody, but the results of it, the effects of it, will be seen by everyone. So the character on which we live, the values in which we live, the very quality of our lives. So often we're so obsessed with quantity. We're disconnected from a quality life. And quantity and quality should be balanced with each other. So to develop this foundation of inner peace, inner meaning, an inner connection with our true self. In the Bible it is said that what profiteth a person if they gain the whole world but they lose their eternal soul? And the Bhagavad Gita tells Najayate Mariyate Vakadachat that it's important to understand who we are. Yoga means harmony, means union. And religion really means the same thing. The Latin word religio means to reconnect. That means to reconnect with ourselves, with each other, with the environment around us, and with God. So the body, the mind, the intelligence should be in harmony with the heart. And the heart with the true self, the living force within us. We're seeing through our eyes, we're tasting through our tongue, we're hearing through our ears, we're thinking through our brain, we're loving through our hearts. Who is that me that's experiencing life through the vehicle of this body and mind? The Vedas, the scriptures of India, tell that the body is like a set of clothes. And the mind is like our underwear. It's like inner clothes. And a lot of people have dirty underwear. That's a problem. But we are the person that's within. And when we understand who we are, we understand the love that is our true nature. To love God, to see all living beings with equal vision, to see the environment as sacred property. That's the nature of who we are. It's beyond sectarianism. It's beyond this religion or that religion. It's a universal principle that all spiritual paths are trying to bring us to. And when we make that connection of harmonizing the body, the mind with the heart, and with the spirit of love that's dormant within every being, but covered by so many layers of ego and forgetfulness, to the degree we're in connection with ourself and we find the peace that's there, we could see how we're all related to each other. And then whatever we do, whatever we speak, whether we're in industry or business or politics, or whether we're accountants or farmers or engineers, or whether we're swamis, little swamis, those are all details. But that we're trying to express the love that's within ourselves in our relationships and in what we do. That's enlightened life. That's a satisfying life that goes so deep. And when we find light within ourselves, we could shine that light in the world.
That's beautiful, and I'm going to next sort of, turn it to you and see, maybe we can have a mic we can pass around, or I'll get up and hand it to anybody who might want to ask a question or say something. But I just want a few more thoughts on that, if I could, in the context of building the foundation.
Please.
Which is, so you talked about the ways to cultivate compassion, and it used examples like meditation and prayer and connecting with people that are, lift you up, and you lift up. I think all of which are really important, and I know you would also agree that service is a way to cultivate compassion. And connecting with nature is something you talked about. So I just wanted to hear a little from you. This company prides itself, and certainly I have felt really blessed to have grown up here in a way, given the culture of service. And there's, again, in this frenetic sort of environment, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about, how to cultivate service. You've done so many things with, hospitals and an orphanage and schools and the eco-village. And you're just a guy, right, from Chicago. We're just, guys and girls here. It's sort of nothing spectacular. And yet I think it's possible for all of us to be able to make acts of great change. And so, what's there for you around that?
Thank you. Her questions are more meaningful than any answers I could give. But still, I'll try. Thank you. Not far from here is Muir Woods, which is a redwood forest. And tomorrow I'm going there. In fact, every year I spend one day with a friend just walking through Muir Woods, because there's so many lessons we could learn by observing nature. Because when we're in tune with nature, the environment, that is a necessary element of being in tune with ourselves and with other human beings, because we're all interconnected. And compassion to other people without recognizing how we're all dependent on the same resources of nature, and we're all dependent on the health of Mother Nature, is inseparable from compassion to humanity and other living beings. So in the Muir Woods, a few years ago, I was walking with my friend, and we wanted to get away from all the tourists. And there was a whole circle of tourists. I think they were from China. And they were around a forest ranger. So I said, let's start climbing the mountains. But on the way, we heard the forest ranger say, I'm going to tell you the underground secret of the redwood forest. So I said to my friend, I was part of the counterculture. You could take some things away, but certain things you can't take out of a person. I said, I really like underground secrets. Let's just hear what he said. And what a beautiful secret it was. He was saying these redwood trees are among the tallest and oldest trees on the planet. And he said, look around. It's loose soil. It's hilly. Over the centuries, there have been devastating earthquakes, massive windstorms, snowstorms, rainstorms. But these redwood trees keep growing and growing. How is that? He gave us a little time to think. And then he said, now I will tell you the underground secret. That the roots of the redwood tree, they don't go down so far. They reach outward. Underground. They're reaching to connect with the roots of other trees. And when those roots touch each other, they embrace, they wrap around each other. In this way, he said, every redwood tree in this forest is directly or indirectly giving support to every other tree in the forest. Even the little baby redwood trees, their roots are hardly like threads, but they wrap around these gigantic ancient roots, and they're given support. It's unity that gives strength. This is the United States. And somehow or other, we became a free country when we separated from the United Kingdom. But union has always been recognized as the greatest strength. And with the redwood trees, if the branches were to wrap around each other, it wouldn't have the same effect. The roots are like the heart of the tree. So our hearts have to be reaching out to really care about each other. And that's where our real strength is. Whether it be in family, among friends, among society, among the nation and the world. And I'll give another example because we oversee a hospital, so I talk to doctors often. The human body has so many different organs and limbs. And each one has a different color and a different shape, size, and a completely different function. There's the kidneys, can't do what the pancreas does, and the pancreas can't do what the lungs do, and the lungs cannot do what the brain does. The brain cannot do what the heart does. They're all unique. A healthy body is not when the organs are competing with each other. They understand they need to appreciate and empower each other. And if you stub your littlest toe, every single cell and organ of your body is going to be sending healing energy to restore the health of that little toe. If the stomach thinks, I have the food, I'm going to keep it myself. You might be happy for a while, thinking, just see how powerful I am. But in due course of time, the whole body suffers. So a compassionate society, a society that's based on truth and wisdom, is one where we recognize and appreciate everyone's contribution. Whether we're in the janitorial services, whether we're in the scientific research services, the management services, the highest leadership services, the financial services, everyone has a place, and a healthy company is where everyone feels valued, everyone feels protected, everyone feels cared for, and when that's there, people give their trust. They give something more than just making a living. They believe in what they're doing. That's what makes a strong family. When there's a higher principle, despite all the differences, there's a higher principle that keeps us united. That's what keeps friends through all the inevitable and unpredictable situations that come between us. Husband, wife, whatever it may be. And in a company, when there's that family spirit where we're really empowering and caring about each other, people give their best because they believe in it. We've learned the hard way in India in some of our projects. And when we actually applied this principle, even if a person could make more money somewhere else, I want to be here. Because I believe in this. And I love to be with the people that are here. I don't remember your question, but I hope it answers it.
That was it. How about from all of you?
Hi, my name is Shay, and first I wanted to say thank you for coming and joining us today. Outside of my job here, I teach Jivamukti Yoga, and it's a discipline that's heavily indebted to your teachings. And so I wanted to thank you not only for your contributions to our discipline, but also to my own spiritual journey. My second question is related, but it's about the issue of race and yoga, and how, so as I'm a white man and I teach yoga, and some feedback that I've received is that perhaps white people should not be teaching yoga, especially if they're getting money from it because of the history of colonialism in India, and that yoga is a discipline that was founded in India, and that perhaps when a white person benefits from it in that way, that it's not appropriate. And I just wanted to know if you had thoughts on that. Thank you.
Actually, I have so many thoughts on that. Thank you. You have kind of asked two questions, so I'll give you kind of two answers. What does yoga mean? Yoga is unity. And the very basics of Patanjali Yoga, Bhagavad Gita's teaching of yoga, of all the Yoga Sutras, the basic principle is we're not this body, that we're the spirit within this body. And the unity of recognizing the family that we're in and how everyone is included in that family. So, there's backlash when there's discrimination. When the British were in India, there was quite a bit of ego that, we're the superior race and, you should follow what we're telling you. And that was, to a large extent, what was happening in India during the British regime. But there were people in the British leadership who really were beyond that and who really recognized and loved the people of India as equals. So it's not always black and white. So the backlash of that is that, what's Indian belongs to the Indians. And why should, other people be meddling with what belongs to us? But that means we really don't understand the whole principle of what yoga is. The purpose of yoga is to bring us beyond those external designations and to see the unity of life and to actually connect with the unity of life. And and if you are inspired, which I'm sure you are, to teach this unity of life and compassion through the process of the different stages of yoga, then you're an authentic yoga teacher. It really doesn't matter whether you're male or female or black or white or red or yellow or brown or whether you're coming from one religion or another religion, because yoga is a universal principle. Bhakti yoga, which we follow, is the yoga of love, the yoga of compassion, where we're really connected to that. And I'd like to say one little thing about Jiva Mukti yoga, because I'm so close with your family. Sharon and David told me a story, and I love this story. Can I tell it?
Please.
I think you'll like it, Susan. They were in, a few years ago, Varanasi, which is a very crowded city in India. It's the holy city where the Ganges flows. And David and Susan are activists in compassion toward all forms of life. So they saw this really poor-looking dog. She only had 3 legs, and she was really skinny. And she's a street dog. So she was just kind of hobbling around, and she looked so confused and desperate. So they wanted to get some food to feed the dog. So they went, about a block or so, and they got bread. And when they started feeding dogs bread, so many dogs were coming, because there's so many street dogs in India. And they were all gathered around her, and they were fighting with each other to get to the bread first. And they're just like, and as soon as they hold the bread, they just grab it and eat it. So maybe a dozen dogs they gave bread to. And they happened to see one dog who was just standing a little behind, just waiting his turn. And as they were feeding all the other dogs, and all the other dogs were jumping to get the bread and snapping at them, they couldn't but recognize this dog standing there patiently waiting. And they went to give this dog the bread, and he didn't snap. He very gently took it in his mouth and didn't eat it, just held it and trotted down the street. So they were fascinated. Let's see what this dog is going to do. They followed him, like about a block away, and under this cart that was selling vegetables or whatever, under the cart, this dog went, and they quietly looked under the cart, and there they saw that 3-legged dog. She was a mother, and there was a little tiny puppy that was snuggled against the mother. And that dog who took the bread, perhaps he was the father, he did not take a single bite out of it. He gave it to the little puppy. And the mother didn't take a bite out of it either. She was just so happy to see the puppy eating. So that selfless spirit of love is the nature of life. And ultimately, it's that love that we have for each other, that love which is expressed not in selfish taking, but in giving. And the reason we want to get so many things is so that we can selflessly give it, whatever it may be. That's a meaningful, joyful life. And I learned that beautiful story from Jiva Mukti.
Thank you.
And it's been a guiding light in my life. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Fatima, and so I'll probably ask the harder question, maybe the elephant in the room, which is, I love to love, and I'm a diehard lover. But how do you love someone who is pure evil? Like people who genuinely have like killed and done atrocities and occupied lands and have just done so much hurt, both directly and indirectly. I haven't been able to fathom a world where what does it look like to love unconditionally? And so I'd love your thoughts on that, because I think it's something I'm currently struggling with in the current political atmosphere that we're in.
I've struggled with that elephant every day of my life, too. In the medical sphere, we can hate the disease, but we don't hate the diseased. Or in biblical terms, hate the sin, but not the sinner. Because to the degree we actually understand our own self, our own identity, and we're able to forgive our own mistakes and our guilts and all of these things, to the extent we really understand that we're precious, eternally, unlimitedly significant people, just because that's who we are, we're part of God, then we could recognize at the heart of life, life is sacred. But when dark clouds, cover the sun, there's practically no trace of the sun. So we have to deal with those things. And when a doctor takes out a disease, it's kind of violence, but at the same time, really, he's doing it not to hurt somebody, but to help. So the more we see this darkness due to arrogance, due to disconnection with our own souls, which you have described, so eloquently, people who are cruel terrorists, people who occupy land, who pollute the earth, who do so many things. This world is a history of just really mean, hateful people who cause so much suffering and misery to others. And that's the reality. And that's definitely an elephant in the room and in the world. But as Martin Luther King said, darkness cannot dispel darkness, and hate cannot dispel hate. Only light could dispel darkness, and only love could dispel hate. So when we see these things, it actually gives us an urgent sense of necessity, of how individually and collectively we do have to make a difference to give light, to give hope, to give love in this world. There was a saint who wrote where he was from Bengal, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that where there's the greatest necessity, there's the greatest opportunity to serve. So when we see the situations that you're talking about, we understand how necessary it is for people to make a positive difference. Does that kind of answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you. And we've come to the end of our time. Thank you so much. It always goes so fast. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. Thank you so much, Radhanath Swami, for being here and sharing with us your wisdom and your passion and your energy and your joy. And we will all take it forward with us in our lives.
Thank you, Suzanne. When I met Suzanne briefly before we came in this room, I could immediately understand her heart to the extent that I'm able. And I expressed to her that I just want to be a puppet dancing on the strings of your goodness during this event. And I thank you so much for being you, and thank you so much for your kindness on me and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Enjoy
you
your
very
journey.
much.